Hi guys, Alex here, this is the Financial Pickle, and today we're looking at the market ramifications of the war in Ukraine, courtesy of Vladimir Putin. You fucking piece of shit. We just want to live in a peaceful world, not in war. But let's leave this to the end. Today we're looking at how the market will respond, which stocks will go up, which stocks will go down, what industries you should keep an eye on and probably look into investing. We will also look at how market previously responded to wars, terrorist attacks and those sorts of black swans. And we will also look at how our everyday lives will be different because of the conflict between Ukraine and Russia, and how the rest of the world, including Europe, UK and US, are dependent on these countries and what will be different for us. So let's find out. To understand the future, let's have a look how in the past the market has reacted to similar events such as wars, terrorist attacks and other nonsense. The company called CFRA, which is here, did an analysis of 24 events since World War II and found that on average S&P 500 fell by 5.5% since its top in the aftermath of the event. On average, we see that in 24 days since the beginning of the event, the market has reached the bottom, and on average 28 days later it reaches its similar position where it was before the fall. So all in all, it looks like 2 months after this whole bullshit has started, we should see our stocks returning to the same place they were before the event. Meanwhile, Truist Advisory Service has done an analysis of 12 events, including the 2003 Iraq War and the 1979 Iranian hostage situation and 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. It found that in 9 out of 12 events, S&P 500 was higher a year later. That means, for example, 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, everything goes to shit. 12 months later, the market has been higher than it was before, on average by 8.6%. That means that the Ukrainian situation right now, the stocks are going down, everything goes to shit. By previous example, we should see the market being higher than it was before the event started by on average 8% 12 months later, which sounds interesting. But you have to remember that the previous situations were completely different. Right now, what is happening is not what has happened before. What's different here is that in this conflict, the 11th biggest economy in the world, that's Russia, is being isolated from the rest of the world. So when people are comparing it to other crises and other wars, it never has been this bad. So for example, Iraq War. Iraq is a small country with minimal impact on the world's economy. It doesn't produce much, it doesn't contribute so much to the economy of the world. Russia, on the other hand, is one of the biggest commodity producers and has a huge economy and impact on the world. And we will talk about this in just a moment as well. I'll give you an example. Similar situation has happened in 2014 when Russia decided to just take Crimea, because apparently you can. And I think that was one of the most strategic problems from the European and US side, is that they let this happen. And they basically showed Russia's like, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want as long as you don't get us involved and we don't care. And hence Russia took the Crimea. These sanctions that were put in place were very short-lived. It didn't stop BP, Chevron, Exxon, Shell from investing in Russia's oil and gas sector following the Crimea situation, and any sanctions that were imposed by US were very, very short-lived. So basically showing to Russia is like, yeah, you can take a piece of another country and we won't do much. And hence we find ourselves 8 years later in bloody the same situation where Russia is like, yeah, if you take half of the country or part of it, I might as well take all of it, and guess what, you're not going to do much. But thankfully the whole world is starting to face against Russia, and they are putting their sanctions in place, much harder sanctions, and they're trying to target it much more heavily, and this will impact the world much stronger than the situation in Crimea. But the way I see it, if in the situation with Crimea we actually acted better and stronger and tried to stop Russia harder, we wouldn't be in the situation where we are in right now with Ukraine. A quick note here, if you want to support Ukraine, you can go to standforukraine.org, which is a company my girlfriend made, which produces t-shirts. 100% of profits goes directly to Ukraine to help them fight this plague of Russian insanity. And by Russian, I mean Putin's, because people are not their president, so to speak. So if you want to support them, link in the description below. You can also buy candies from Yaro.life, which is also a Ukrainian brand, so you can help them to survive this insanity, because they're based in Kiev and shit is not looking good here. Take a look at the picture here. That is not good. So if you want to support, links in the description. Thank you very much if you did, and let's continue to the next one. So let's have a look at what Russia and Ukraine are producing and how they are contributing to the world's economy and to the everyday commodity market as well. We will start with Ukraine. It may sound like Ukraine is not a very big player on the world's market, but it turns out it is one of the leading producers and exporters of grains and other agricultural products, which are extremely important to feeding people around the world. That is devastating. Therefore, you can clearly see that the war in Ukraine will clearly impact the supply of grains and agricultural products on the world's market, which means that the prices for the basic necessities like bread, for example, or cereal will go up considerably in the aftermath of the war. And this will impact not only the neighboring countries, but the whole of Europe, UK, and US as well. On the other hand, this is great news for grains and agricultural product producers from other countries like US, Canada, France, and so on. So you might want to look into those sectors and see which companies are producing similar products to Ukraine and probably invest in them, because sure as shit, they will be increasing their prices as the demand will stay the same or even grow in the foreseeable future, most likely grow, and there will be less supply, so the prices will go up, their profitability will go up as well, and hence you will probably get a nice 10-15% return on your investment. But this is not a financial advice, this is just me thinking out loud what you could potentially do. Now let's look at what Russia is famous for, and this is going to surprise a lot of people. Let's start with the obvious. Russia produces about 40% of gas and oil which is shipped to Europe, so that is a huge problem. And the prices for gas has been increasing considerably over the past few months. You will also find that because of the war, there is some important streams of gas that go through Ukraine, which can be damaged because of absolute insane bombings that happen there right now. And you know, they recently bombed like a nuclear power plant, which is much bigger than the Chernobyl's one, which is just fucking stupid, right? And if you think about the gas pipes that go under Ukraine, if they get damaged, well, Europe will be pretty fucked without any gas. This is, however, great news for other gas producers. Companies like Norway's Equinor and Vermilion will definitely benefit from this gas situation, and because EU will be scrambling for gas very shortly, there will be less regulatory concerns for these companies to produce and ship and supply countries, so they will definitely increase their prices and will try to supplement the demand. Other companies you want to look out for as well is the liquid gas producers as well in the US and Canada. These companies include Exxon, Chevron, BP, and Total Energies. These are just some of the largest companies that produce gas and most likely will benefit from this whole situation. Another thing you want to keep in mind is the transportation of gas as well. So the company like Flex LNG will most likely benefit as well from this whole crisis situations once the supply of gas needs to happen in some way and it needs to be delivered. So the companies that transport the gas will also benefit from this situation. Something to look into. But please do your research before you start investing anywhere. This is not a financial advice. This is a financial pickle. So keep that in mind and do your research before you start investing. Otherwise you'll be fucked like this guy. And if you want to find out more, look at this video there or there somewhere around here about my story. To the next. Next on our list is thermal coal, of course, where Russia supplies a lot of it to Europe and not only Europe. And the companies like BHP or US-based producers Peabody with the sign BTU most likely will benefit from higher prices and supply chain problems for Russia because they wouldn't be able to sell or ship their thermal coal to places outside of Russia. Hopefully, because f them, you should invade other countries. And also the commodity traders such as Glencore will also benefit from the increasing prices of all of these commodities when this whole situation gets completely out of hand. Hopefully not, but unfortunately it looks like it will in the next couple of weeks. So let's find out. But Russia is also famous for a few other exports which are very important in the car industry. What are they? Next up on the list is aluminium. Of course, Russia is a key supplier of aluminium, which is used everywhere. So that also is a big problem. And the prices have been rising over the past year pretty much. So it is something to be expected. But with this whole supply chain problems from Russia, most likely most of the companies will be looking to diversify their supply chain and find other suppliers. So other companies that produce aluminium will likely benefit from this. These include Rio Tinto and Alcoa, something to look into as well, because the demand will be higher, supply will be lower, the prices will be higher, and common economics, that makes sense. And the other thing that you want to look into is nickel. Nickel, which Russia is also a key exporter of, which is great because we don't have enough of it as it is already. And with sanctions in Russia and their bad behavior, they should be punished. And the supply chains will be looking to diversify again and find other suppliers. So companies like Vale, Glencore and BHP are likely to benefit from this situation as well. But it will mean that prices of cars are likely to increase in the foreseeable future by a substantial margin, because nickel is used in the production of batteries, so electric car companies are f***ed, and aluminium is used everywhere else, and increased prices there will likely cause an increase in car prices as well. With high uncertainties on the markets, investors are likely to pull their money out of risky stocks, that's tech companies, cryptocurrencies, God forbid, stocks in general, and put it into things like treasuries or consumer staples such as Coca-Cola or Altria. I don't actually know what Altria is. We need to have a look. This is what it does. Now I know, and now you know. Now let's look at how US and Europe can affect Russia. At the moment, the commodity market is a two-way street, so we're hurting them, they are hurting us right back with the supply chain problems. But when it comes to finance and technologies, guess what? Russia is f***ed because they're so corrupt they can't even make anything pretty much. So they are really reliant on the rest of the world that can actually innovate and develop things. So US is likely to input Huawei-like sanctions on Russia, preventing them from buying technologies, microchips, all of that side of things that will hurt the growth of Russian development, thankfully, because they didn't deserve it after what they have done. And this will likely annoy consumers. The problem is that Russian people just take it. They don't give a shit. They've been under the same president for like 22 years, 23 years. It's insane. So it doesn't really matter if the sanctions will affect the normal people in Russia, because guess what? A lot of them are brainwashed, by the way, which is insane and scary. I will talk about it probably in another video. But the problem is they will just take it. They just like, they don't care. They will be like, whatever, it's fine. We will stand by our leader and not do anything about it. Unfortunately, that's the realities that we live in. The sanctions will also include taking Russia out of the financial system of the world and preventing it from buying dollars, euros and that side of things. But Russia has been preparing for it. So for example, in their trade with China before 2014, the 97% of their transactions with China was in dollars. Right now, it is only about 30%. So they have prepared very well for this invasion and they have envisioned those sort of problems. So they switched away from dollar currencies and trading in other currencies that they will have access to when this whole shit went into full force like it did just now. The problem is that the long-term impact of the sanctions and of the war is very hard to predict, but it looks like Russia will tilt towards east, working with China and east of the world. And China, on the other hand, will look at the situation in Russia and all the sanctions and will try to become independent of the rest of the world on the imports and to be self-sufficient, which will also create serious problems for the world maybe 10-15 years down the line. So the world economic crisis might not happen today, right now, but the implications of this war that we as people from Europe and the US were not didn't care enough to stop back in 2014, we will eat those implications 10-15 years later when shit will get out of hand. And guess what? As soon as China becoming more and more self-sufficient and independent, they will start doing similar shit as Russia does, because what are you gonna do, right? And by you, I mean Europe and US. So right now is a great opportunity to show to the rest of the world that this sort of behavior that Russia is doing is not going to be tolerated. Europe will unite together into the one force that can stop this dictator and hopefully prevent any future countries from doing something similar and trying to take a piece of the land for the bunch of it from its neighbor, like China is doing with Taiwan right now. So thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let me know in the comment section below what you think about this whole situation. I would love to hear your comments. So thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
We gotta make them right, chillin' with mine. We triple up, they on the double up, triple dub. Came from the basement, we only going up. They loving us. Up in the booth, I'm getting dizzy, but they the cup is up. Toast to my people that's on the come up, and you live with us.